Yeah.
I went on auditions when I was a little kid all the time, and you would just be in the middle of the script, you'd be reading it, and the guy would go, yeah, thank you for coming.
I was talking to this dude once. He was a martial arts guy that was also an actor. And he was saying that it's a real problem in Hollywood is that they don't have enough roles for Asian people. But he wasn't saying it like, you know, as an Asian guy, it's very difficult for me to get parts.
Right.
He was saying it like Hollywood has a responsibility to write roles and to have roles for Asian people. And I remember me and him having this conversation, and part of me wanted to see it from his perspective and go, yeah, that's got to suck. Because imagine if you're an Asian man and you're trying to act in Hollywood and there's 100 movies, but there's only one role for an Asian man. But there's like 99 roles or 250,000 roles for a white guy.
Right.
Like, what do you do?
That's
like,
tough.
But is it the responsibility of Hollywood to write for Asian people? Because here was my take on it was like, okay, if you're a guy and you're a screenwriter and you have a vision, you're not thinking, I want to make 2 black lesbians and 1 Asian guy and, you know, have as few white people as possible.
Right.
What I want to do is just make a movie.
Right.
And I have a movie about a monster chasing people. I don't give a fuck who he kills. I'm not thinking about it that way.
Right.
But his responsibility was Hollywood is an industry and they need to make space for Asian people.
Yeah, I think there are weird blind spots, right? Like, it was weird that they never had an Asian person on SNL for years. It was weird that they never had a black woman on SNL.
When did the first Asian person get on
Recently.
SNL? Was that guy that's on it right now?
Yeah. It's
really
weird that they didn't, but a lot of the people that write for these comedy shows are all Harvard white guys. It's not even like working class guys.
Right.
It's like people that all come out of Harvard, all come out of Yale.
Same with News Radio. When I was on News Radio, a lot of the writers came from there.
Oh, yeah. So there are these blind spots, and I think that, like, you do want different types of people that bring different things to the table. I think what happens is you also have to understand and accept the fact that there may just be less Asian people pursuing comedy. That's also a fact.
There's perhaps less.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this isn't even comedy. We're talking about just acting.
Yeah. And there's going to be less. There's going to be more white people because the majority of the country has been white for so long that when you look at the movies and the TV shows, they're all going to be predominantly white because that's the majority population. But yeah, Hollywood should do a better job of writing roles for different types of people.
Right, but whose job is that to do? Because if you're thinking about a guy who's a screenwriter, if you're just a dude and you're just trying to, you're some Quentin Tarantino character, right? You're just trying to write some crazy, wild movie that's going to be an awesome movie. You're most likely not thinking about making sure that the cast is diverse.
I think you got to hire an Asian screenwriter.
Well, this conversation that I had with this guy was like in the early 2000s or the late 90s. It was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But I remember being in a situation where part of me wanted to argue against it and part of me wanted to argue for it. So from his position, I was like, yeah, I get it. I see what you're saying. It's got to suck. But then I was like, but man, if you're a guy who's got a vision and your vision is like 4 white guys go camping and they get eaten by a werewolf and that's the whole movie, like, what is it your job to cast an Asian guy? Is it your job to decide one of these guys is Asian?
I think it's about stories, right? So you got to look at like where you would look at, like, obviously every movie is not 4 white guys get eaten by a guy. So you look at like what are interesting stories that may emanate from Asia. Like find stories about Asian people, find stories, and I think that can be done. People should do a better job of that. I think it's studio heads going, because there are markets, right? There's markets out there that are underserved. So there are people that want to see those movies that aren't getting them. And then when you have the Black Panther, when you had Black Panther, people were like, okay, we want to see this. It's a big movie. So I think it's just the job is finding those markets out there that make, because nobody does anything unless it makes them money.
Right.
So I think what they're afraid of is doing things that fail. Doing things that don't make the money. So I think once it's shown that these things are profitable and they do make money and people do want to see them, you'll see more of it. I think now we've gone the other way where it's an overcorrection where we're putting identity above talent.
Yeah.
That becomes a huge problem.
That is a problem.
The game is supposed to be that everybody, regardless of who they are, has to compete, and their talent has to be the main driving factor.
And then, because the problem with that is you get bad actors, and I don't mean bad actors in terms of like not being good at acting. I mean people that are acting in bad faith. They decide to play off of this their identity versus talent, and they try to weasel their way in a position to get roles.
And it lowers
manipulate
the quality of everything. And you want, and by the way, it's actually not the really funny comedians or the really good actors that are minorities that get chosen. It actually happens to be the people that are the most political,
yes,
and the loudest, and the most able to take advantage of the system. So you see actually a lot of really funny comedians get passed over in favor of people that are just very good at optics. And I think that's the problem. I think we all want more diverse movies, and we want things that are interesting.
We want opportunity for everybody.
I want opportunity for everybody.
Does.
I also get bored. I don't want to watch just 4 white guys in the woods get eaten by a werewolf. But I want
to. It's a good movie, though.
Yeah, I want to watch it once, but then I also want to see different types of movies. Absolutely.
Remember that Mickey Rourke movie?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's one of the crazy things. I had this wild conversation with Quentin Tarantino that's become a big deal about Bruce Lee. But one of the, because he was kind of critical of Bruce Lee and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and painted him in a way that a lot of people, and he defended it. But the point is, like, when Bruce Lee came along, he was the coolest person on earth. And you have to understand what it was like to be me in the 1970s when the Bruce Lee movies came out and I was a little kid. I was blown away. I was living in New Jersey, and me and my friend, we lived in this apartment building together. We watched one of the Bruce Lee movies on television, and I couldn't fucking believe how cool he was. And everybody wanted to be this one Chinese guy.
Right.
Everybody wanted to be Bruce Lee, which had never happened before.
Right.
Like, a guy was so cool that a previously not unrecognized but uncelebrated class, a Chinese martial arts actor, like, that didn't exist, now was the most important, one of the biggest, most popular actors in the country, which is nuts. Like, that's never happened before.
Right.
Where one guy breaks through in a genre and literally transcends all of Hollywood and became Bruce fucking Lee.
Right.
Where when you thought about martial arts, you thought of Bruce Lee, and he was literally one of the biggest stars on earth.
Right.
Which is nuts.
No, and that's the whole importance of having people like that.
Yeah. Well, it's also like there was so many things going on there. There was like incredible talent, incredible physical looks. Like, he was shredded. No, who the fuck was shredded back
like
then?
That, yeah.
When Bruce Lee would take off his shirt and go like this and pull his lats up, nobody was built like that back then. I mean, he was fucking shredded.
Yeah.
Nobody, like, who back then had a six-pack like Bruce Lee? Nobody. And by the way, no steroids back then either. Or if there was, I mean, I think actors were on them. Like, maybe Bulgarian weightlifters were on them.
It's an interesting question, though. Whose responsibility is it? I think it's everybody who's got to work together a little bit. I don't think it falls on any one person.